Clean up. Clean up. Clean up. Good boy, okay. Hello and welcome to another devlog for Let There Be Light. This week we will be focusing on the ground attack, which is the last of the basic attacks that will be happening on the ground. So that's pretty exciting. After that, all that'll be left for the basic attacks will be the air attacks. And I'm thinking I may take a short break and work on a couple other areas of the game before I tackle those. I've had a couple different ideas for the ground attack, because one I thought would look cooler while the other I thought would make more sense. But I think I've decided to go with the cool looking one, and I've got some ideas on how I can make it make sense. The one that I didn't go with was straight out of Super Smash Bros. A pretty common sword move in that game is just to crouch and then you do a little sword swipe at your opponent's feet. And while I'm not going to go with that move, it did make me think about crouching, and that's something I've thought about before. I think I need to implement crouching into the game. Because of how big the player is, his hitbox is also pretty big. And when testing combat with my little fire bat enemies, it's pretty annoying not being able to duck underneath their projectiles that are at the player's head level. So I don't think that should be too hard to do. All I should have to do is reduce the size of the hitbox when the player holds down. And then of course I'll have to create a crouching animation, which also should not be too bad. But yeah, there's not a whole lot more to say, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so the down attack is finished, at least I think. After playing around with it a little bit and actually using it to kill some enemies, I do like it. But I wasn't sure at first, and even now still I think something's kind of missing. I think it needs a little bit more of a pop at the end near the explosion. Maybe not so much of a pop, but the explosion's just not very believable because it doesn't stick around for long enough. So I think I need more frames of it kind of dying out. But I'm not sure if I'm gonna add those yet, because it seems okay. I mean, it's not perfect, but for now it's definitely good. And if I do decide to add a couple more frames, that shouldn't be a huge deal. This one took me quite a while though. I worked on it a lot this week. I finished the drawings on Wednesday and then started putting it into the game this morning. And again, hooking it up to the code was no problem, but I did have quite a few issues just with trying to play the flames and the actual attack animation on top of each other. I kind of messed up my sprite sheets a little bit and kept having to go back and edit them. And because I'm playing the two animations on top of each other, every time I went to make a change to the sprite sheet, I had to like realign the animations, and it was just very annoying and very exhausting. So I definitely don't want to go and edit that animation again and have to go through that again today. So gonna hold off on that for as long as I can. Like I said though, once I got the attack in the game, it did feel nice. I like it. It's very slow. It's meant to be kind of a heavy attack. Once you use it, you're locked into the animation for about 1.2 seconds. If you get the move off in time, then you get big damage and big knockback. Way too big of knockback right now. But of course, if you get hit, then the move is canceled. And that's actually what I worked on after I got the attack in, is there was quite a bit of fixing up that needed to be done. For example, if you got hit while you were doing an attack, the player's sword swinging animation would cancel, but the flames would stay there, and the flames are what actually have the hitbox. So the attack still went off even though the player was doing like the damage animation and the going back to the idle animation. So I fixed that. I fixed up the blade demon enemy quite a bit. He was really wonky, had a lot wrong with him. When his wild run activates, I want him to be able to run through the player with no collision whatsoever. So in order to do that, I have to turn off his main collider. If I just do that, he falls through the floor. So I also have to turn gravity off for him. And you can probably already see how this is causing problems. As a solution, I was attempting to use a raycast to detect if he was going to run into a wall, and if he was, then he would just turn around and run the other way. But I was still having problems with him being able to get into the wall, and then he would get stuck there. I finally figured out why. It was the way I ordered my code. So in the fixed update animation, I was calling the method to move the blade demon enemy first at the top of the fixed update method, and then I was calculating the raycast and all the other movement calculations underneath that. So when I watched the blade demon in slow-mo, he would run into the wall, the raycast would hit the wall and detect that collision, but it hadn't moved the blade demon enemy yet, so he would go inside the wall, and then the raycast would turn him around, and that's why he was getting stuck. So I flipped that, and that fixed a lot of those problems. As for falling through the floor, I just have it so that if he walks off an edge, the wild run ends and his collider turns back on. But I was still often seeing his feet get stuck in the floor, and I did some digging and I found that if the wild run activated and gravity and the colliders were all turned off, and then while the wild run was still happening, he entered his attack sequence, then one of his colliders and gravity would both turn back on, but there was another collider at his feet that I was missing that needed to be turned on. So that solved that issue. And he's feeling a lot better now. I made a little test chamber and threw a bunch of them in there, and they did pretty good. If there's just one, there were no issues at all, and that's fantastic. That's enough for me. But even with 4 or 5, one got stuck in the wall, but I don't think it was until I went down there with them and started really causing havoc. They can still be pushed through the wall pretty easily, so, it's not perfect, but it works for now. And the last new big thing, and it doesn't really sound that big, especially if you've never tried to make a platformer before, but I've just decided to take slopes out of the game entirely. I kind of joked about doing this in the last video, but I was looking around on the internet and I found that Hollow Knight basically has no slopes for the same reason. They're just ridiculously complicated to code. And I saw on Reddit that there are a couple of slopes, but there's no enemies around them. And according to this post, I don't know how true it is, the trick they used was if the player is walking up the slope, there's actually an invisible platform that moves with the player and elevates him up the slope. Maybe it probably just goes up and down. I don't know. It moves with the player. If he's going up, it raises up. If he's going down the slope, the platform lowers, and just the platform is what elevate and de-elevates him. So I at least got slopes working with the player, and it sounds like that's what Hollow Knight did, and so that's good enough for me. I am more than satisfied with that. This is huge though, because every time I added a new attack, every time I added a new enemy, every time I added new functionality to an enemy, I had to test it against the slopes, and every time the slopes broke the new thing. It sucked. So yeah, I'm very happy to have that weight lifted off my shoulders of not having to worry about slopes anymore. But as for next week, I am going to take a little break from animating. I did not get the crouch made this week. I figured it's not really a priority, and after the mess of animations today, just really didn't want to make another one. But I'm going to just try and clean up everything that I have now for next week. I want to work on knockback mainly. I gotta find something that works there. Right now it's super inconsistent. When I went and looked at Hollow Knight, it seemed like they don't really have knockback. I still haven't played a lot of it, so there might be enemies I haven't seen that have it. But they don't seem to have knockback. They just have really good camera shake and sound effects that really make the hit feel satisfying and damaging. I want to add something to spice up my attacks a little bit. So yeah, there's that and more to come, but that's all I've got this week. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll catch you in the next one.